Take into account two things when it comes to the expectations of a return in any Garrett Crochet deal, and I want to discuss that next on Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the site expert of SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the FanSided Network. And also, I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show at wherever you get your podcasts. Well, I hate to dash any hopes of a massive return of a bunch of top 100 prospects in any Garrett Crochet deal, but the possibility exists based on two reasons that the Sox could get a less than ideal return that I wanted to discuss in the first segment. Then let's explore the shortstop free agent market to see if there's a viable bridge option to Colson Montgomery. And finally, it's Monday, so let's do a minor league Monday review of the four pitchers the Sox have in their top 10. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. All right, so there are two instances you and I should take into account when it comes to believing the White Sox will get a major haul for Garrett Crochet. Because obviously, I agree with Chris Getz's assessment that if you're going to trade Garrett Crochet, you got to get positional prospects. Obviously, I'm a die on the hill. Do not trade Garrett Crochet. Extend him. Let's keep him through the entire decade. Have him anchor then with a realized potential Noah Schultz and a realized potential Hagen Smith. You got Jonathan Cannon, Drew Thorpe, Jairo Iriate, Kai Bush, Mason Adams, Grant Taylor. They've got a bunch of pitching depth. It would be amazing to build a rotation around Garrett Crochet. But since the Sox are not going to be spending much money in free agency, the only way that they can get these positional prospects that they need to help impact their lineup someday is trade their best asset, and that's Garrett Crochet. And obviously, you would love to get, two highly rated prospects that are hitters from a team's top five, particularly close to making their major league debut, like say the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles, they can offer those guys. And then you throw in, two or three more high ceiling prospects in A-ball. But here's the thing to take into account. The White Sox got just three prospects for Dylan Cease, and two of them were pitchers. Shout out to CHGO's Vinny Duber. I got to get him on the show again. I got to effort him one more time. But he brought that to light. So shout out to him on that, because Dylan Cease's trade market could play a role in what the Sox get for Garrett Crochet. The other factor to consider is the White Sox get an offer for Crochet that includes taking Andrew Benintendi's salary off their books. Now, the White Sox have just two guaranteed deals right now on their books, and that includes Benintendi's $17.1 million that you can bet the front office and ownership would love to get out from. But first, let's get into Dylan Cease's trade market impacting Crochet's potential trade market. The trade demand was so high that Cease actually started spring training with the Sox. And rightfully so. The Sox, I think, correctly valued Dylan Cease in terms of the importance that he had to the Sox versus to the entire market. And Chris Getz bet right. He did a good job of saying, you know what? No, I'm not going to take anything less than 100% for him. But when they finally moved him, they got pitchers Drew Thorpe and Jairo Iriate and outfielder Samuel Zavala. Thorpe was a top 100 prospect, and Iriarte was also held in high regard for the stuff that he has. There was talk that he could have even made the Padres out of spring training. He was having that good of a spring training too. But since the White Sox wanted at least two players close to the big leagues, according to Sox Machine's James Fegan, they sort of had to settle for high floor, low ceiling guys like Thorpe and Iriarte. Everyone has been sold. When you read the prospect reports, the scouting reports of Thorpe coming into the season, everybody agreed that he was probably going to be a big league pitcher. But the issue was his non-movement, low 90 mile per hour fastball was going to maybe have him just be a back of the rotation pitcher or even a reliever. If you have, because he has one of the best changeups in all of baseball. Even at Double-A, he had one of the best changeups. But since he was more of a spin guy, but he needed that fastball to establish his other pitches, and it not having much movement and it being low velocity, there was the fear, and we saw it a few times, where he was going to get tattooed. So, it was going to be hard for him to reach his ceiling, which could be an Aaron Nola, Mark Burley type ace, but those guys are, it's hard for them to make it now in today's big leagues with the way that, hitters are now able to time up even 100-mile-an-hour fastballs. So that's the thing. He was more of a command guy. And there is always the risk with command guys that if they're not commanding, especially hitting their spots, and with Thorpe, he's got to keep that fastball down, or he's got to hit the corners, that he could get roughed up, that he might not be the ace. So that's why the Padres had no trouble, and even the Dodgers had no trouble. I mean, the Yankees had no trouble moving on from him. Not to say that he was a bad pitcher, and I think he could be, again, an Aaron Nola or Mark Burley. I do believe that. I love his stuff. I'm just saying at the time, and Iriarte, he was viewed at least being a very good bullpen arm. And could he be an effective starter? That was the question. Only Zavala was viewed as having a high ceiling since he was 19 at the time. Boy, did he have a rough year at high A ball. But teams, again, are showing they are willing to give up arms closer to the big leagues because it's easier to develop pitchers. It is these days. You got pitch labs, and you got a better understanding of pitch construction. You got a better understanding of the physics of how the baseball moves, spin, all that stuff. So you can move on. Hitting, if you get a guy close to the big leagues, and especially if he's in your top 5, you're holding on to them. Because, again, I had Vinny Duber on the show from CHGO a while back, and he said they come cheap. Why move on from those guys? Look what Baltimore's doing. Baltimore could easily emptied their farm system, to get guys that put them over the top. They didn't. Heston Kjerstad was never traded, and now he's going to replace Anthony Santander, and he's possibly going to have a very good big league career. The only way they have gotten, you get rid of those guys is you've given them some runway and realize, well, time to move on, like Miguel Vargas, or they're getting on the old side of being a prospect, like Dominic Fletcher and Zach DeLoach. And hey, guess who's the team that were dumb enough to trade for those 3 guys? The White Sox. No wonder why they have to keep looking for positional players. But if you want a stud hitter, you might have to go with one that is at that is at A ball. Like what the Reds took when they got Novelli Marte in the Luis Castillo deal. Or you got to hope for excess. Like the Orioles had with Joey Ortiz. He was a top 100 prospect. And they send him to the Brewers, for Corbin Burns. That's what you need. You either need excess, or again, they're at low A, they're at low or high A, where it's going to be a while, where it's still like, hey, this could go either way. And Cease actually had Cease had Cy Young votes. He was he was a runner-up in 2022 for the Cy Young, and he only yielded 2 pitchers and a low A hitter. They both had 2 years of club control. Dillon had 2 years. Obviously, Crochet has 1. The difference was Cease was coming off a terrible 2023 season, where Crochet, you can sell, is ascending. So that's the one thing when you say, oh man, is Dylan Cease going to, Todd, why are you ruining this for me? Well, Dylan Cease was kind of a change of scenery guy, but still had a 4.50 ERA coming off that terrible year. Was he going to be the slide ace again? We don't know. So that's why teams on the other side of the phone could possibly be like, you know what? I'm not giving you the high-end prospects, kind of like the Braves said. He's asking for too much. And they said no. Plus, Cease was 28 coming into the season. Crochet is going to be 25. He has less innings on his arm, and he already had his Tommy John surgery. So also, Crochet could agree to a contract extension. Dylan Cease, it sounds like he wants to get to free agency. So that's why I'm going to say, hey, the Dylan Cease trade market, as a template, but the Sox might be able to at least get a hitter, in return, where for Cease it was some other factors. But you do have to take into account this is what has already been established. But my big fear is the Sox claim poverty and take the salary relief by trying to trade Andrew Benintendi in this deal. The Athletics' Will Salmon wrote this, and this is why I'm terrified. This is what he wrote in The Athletic. Could a team like the Mets absorb salary in a potential trade and therefore lower the prospect cost? Outfielder Andrew Benintendi is owed $49.3 million over the next 3 seasons. Outfielder Luis Robert Jr., a much more enticing trade candidate, will make $15 million in 2025 with club options for the following 2 years, each valued at $20 million. It's an option the White Sox must consider provided a trading partner is willing to take on the money. No, Will, it's not. We're tired of this franchise claiming poverty. Okay? Right now, Spotrac has the White Sox payroll projected to be $66 million. That's obviously right now they have no other free agents signed on the books. It's just their ARB guys and their pre-ARB guys, and then Benintendi and Luis Robert Jr. And I'm even thinking the Sox start the season with an $85 million payroll. I know SoxMachine.com, they have their offseason exercise. I think it's like $125 million that they're giving you to play with. So even though Jerry Reinsdorf likely took a massive loss this season with attendance being way down, and now that the cable grift is over for him, and the team is likely struggling to bring in cash through the new Chicago Sports Network RSN, he still should be able to afford a $85 to $125 million payroll. This is not the time to be claiming poverty after you only won 41 games. Okay? You can't be taking a less return to just shed Benintendi and Luis Robert Jr.'s salary. I mean, if you have to add LRJ to guarantee a massive return, even then they should be traded separately. And hopefully Luis Robert Jr. is traded at the 2025 trade deadline after hopefully bouncing back and reclaiming his value after the lost 2024 season. But attaching Benintendi's salary will drain your return for your premium asset in Crochet. I'm sorry. It's going to drain that. You should not be trading your 4.7 F4 player along with the guy that has been just an albatross on your payroll. Economics should stop playing a factor in what the White Sox do. Okay? If you're going to be trading a guy that you could build a dominant rotation around for the next decade to hopefully build up your lineup towards the end of the decade, you shouldn't be taking anything less because, hey, we got to get rid of Andrew Benintendi's contract. Okay? Pony up. If you want to get rid of Andrew Benintendi's contract, eat some of that salary, pony it up, and move him on to another team in a separate deal. Especially, too, one of the things that you're going to be able to sell on Garrett Crochet is he's projected to not make anywhere near what Dylan Cease made this season. Dylan Cease got $8 million because he actually started through his entire career. He was a starter. He logged a lot of innings. Nearly won the Cy Young in 2022. Crochet missed all of 2022 with Tommy John surgery and most of 2023. That's why he's projected to earn just $2.9 million according to Spotrac. Okay? So that's the other thing. You can save $5 million compared to Cease by trading for Garrett Crochet. That's why he's attractive to pretty much the entire trade market. Don't go cheap. Don't go poverty here. If you're going to trade your best asset, your draw at the gate, you should not be saying, well, I got to get some salary cap relief or some salary relief too. If you're Chris Getz, keep highlighting too over and over again. $2.9 million, made an all-star team. Just needs to throw more than 4 innings in the second half. He's cleared every hurdle. That's why I'm, valuing him so high. So it'll be interesting to see how the economics play into what the Sox will do at shortstop in 2025. Let's discuss the free agent options and even if one should be pursued next on Locked On White Sox. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And I always maintain FanDuel spreads, over, under, and money lines. They're fun to play, but if you want to win big or at least double your money, FanDuel's parlays, props, and futures is the way to go. So, for example, tonight's Houston and Dallas game, the popular parlay is Joe Mixon, CeeDee Lamb, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell, all scoring an anytime touchdown. That is going off at plus 4,633. So $10 on that. And if it hits, you can win $463.36. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back into Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms, so make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. All right, so in another dimension, the White Sox signed Willy Adames to prove the lineup, lead the clubhouse, and you move Colson Montgomery, who some scouts wonder if he can play short in the big leagues, to second, and finally solve that hole in the lineup that has been plaguing them ever since Ray Durham left town in 2002. But we live in this dimension where the White Sox are awful and they barely spend what a team in the third largest market should. And they're always acting like they feel inferior to the Chicago Cubs. And that's another reason why they can't spend, and just on and on and on and on and on. I'm jealous of that other dimension where they spend a lot of money. So they could also spend on Ha-Seong Kim too, but I'm not sure the owner would even authorize a 4-year deal for $50 million that he's projected to get. But something needs to be done at short. And I know I've talked about it a few times this offseason, but I never really have gone over, hey, who should they do? Who should they get in free agency? Because they're going to need a bridge, I think, because Montgomery's going to need a few months in AAA to prove his strong September and Arizona Fall League can carry over. Because remember, he was terrible at AAA Charlotte, a hitter's ballpark, up until September. So you want him to show that it is starting to click, and obviously put him still back in a low pressure situation at AAA, because you want him to still hit his high ceiling, and that's he's got in comparison to being a Corey Seager type hitter. That's what you want. That's a foundational player. You don't want his floor, which is Paul DeJong. Okay, and the Sox could go internally, but it's not the best option. They could rotate Jacob Amaya and Brooks Baldwin like they did at the end of the season, but Amaya hit 176 with a 413 OPS and one double in 68 at bats. I talked about, well, maybe the more I look at Jacob Amaya, I just think nice depth guy. He could be in AAA. Call upon him if you need somebody to get you through a week or two because of an injury. But this is not a guy that should be starting the season as your shortstop. Baldwin hit 211 with a 566 OPS and 2 dingers and 114 at bats. Although if you do want some defense, Amaya had 3 defensive runs saved in 185 and a thirds innings at shortstop this season. But again, that's why you keep Jacob Amaya as organizational depth. Baldwin, I would prefer, maybe you rotate him at second base and short if you want to still see that, his high hitting, because all he did was hit in the minors. Could that translate to the big leagues? Maybe. But you do have second base open, and you could rotate him in with Lenny and Sosa. So I think it might be worth going back to the free agency, to get a bridge, because especially, they were able to trade Paul DeJong for a guy with a reliever ceiling. And there's nothing wrong with bringing in a veteran for a few months, hope that there's a trade value there, and cash out. But it's not the greatest free agent, market. I mean, they could have veterans. They could add a veteran in Jose Iglesias. He could perform his Latin hit OMG during the 7th inning too. He did become a fan favorite in New York because of that, but not only because of the OMG rally cry that was created, but he had a 2.5 FWAR this season. And he didn't even make the club out of spring trading. Had a 377, 381, 448 slash line in 85 games. Projects to cost $1.7 million per Spotrac. He was a 1.62 win probability added player. Although his better fielding numbers now come at third, where he had 4 defensive runs saved in 103rd innings, compared to he only played 18 innings this year at shortstop, and he had a -1 defensive run saved. And 2024 might just have been his best season And the Sox could be buying high when, even at 1.7, when he's set to have a career decline. Because he's going to be 35 when opening day happens. Enrique Hernandez is another cheap veteran option, projected to earn $2.8 million per Spotrac, 1.31 B-WAR in 2024, 0.7 F-WAR, had a 229, 281, 373 slash line with 12 home runs. So you get some double-digit power, but you're not going to get much on base, and you're not going to get much average. But you can play him all over the field, so there is positional versatility, and he's very solid defensively. And he's going to be 33 next season, and he has 2 World Series rings with the Dodgers. Ahmed Rosario could be another veteran to bring in. He's going to be 29 when the season starts. Slash line 280, 306, 380 with a 96 WRC plus and a 0.3 F4. Barely above replacement level, so that sounds like just right up the White Sox alley. Does not provide much power. Meh, glove. With a -1 DRS and a -2 outs above average this year at short, but he can play second and outfield. Again, reunion with Paul DeYoung? No. Reunion with Tim Anderson? No. DeYoung, the risk is he can't play defense again, and then all of a sudden he doesn't hit home runs, because that guy hit home runs like he was wanting to get the heck out of the South Side. He was like, "Oh, you're going to trade me if I hit home runs? Done. I'm going to crush this baseball." But he was terribly defensively. And one of the reasons why he was brought in was to improve the defense. Because remember, that's how the Sox were going to win games. They were going to have run prevention. And they couldn't prevent runs on top of not being able to score runs. And Anderson, I love TA. I love how he was changed, hashtag change the game. But all the stuff that's going on off the field in his personal life has just made him lost at the plate. And he even said that maybe it was too much for him to be the face of the franchise. So I don't think he's ever going to recover from that. So I would not entertain a potential reunion there. Well, it's Monday, and that means I'll keep doing Minor League Monday reviews of the team's top 30 prospects. To make sure I get this done before the season starts, I'm going to go over the 4 pitchers the Sox have in their top 10 next on Locked On White Sox. I've seen Michael Jordan and LeBron James drop 55 live and in person. Heck, I've seen Brandon Jennings drop 55 live and in person, and Michael Redd drop that many points too. Catching a basketball game live is the way to go, and I suggest using the Gametime app for your ticket needs. Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Pick filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And Gametime Picks makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, so you make sure that, hey, you don't have an obstructive view. I know I've been kind of monitoring the Gametime app for the Marquette-Purdue game tomorrow. Kind of want to check that out. Trying to convince my wife, hey, can I go? That type of stuff. And I can be like, hey, here's these great deals on the Gametime app. The lowest price guarantee or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying the ticket. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKONMLB for $20 off. Again, LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today, because what time is it? Game time. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Love the community we're building on the YouTube page. Please hit the like button on today's episode. Recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox or wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. And hey, 5-star review would be greatly appreciated. So 2 weeks ago, I reviewed Noah Schultz's the team's top prospect and top pitching prospect, amazing 2024 minor league season, and how the White Sox are doing a great job in his development, handling his innings. Didn't obviously go over Hagen Smith because he barely pitched at high A because he was just drafted. Last week, reviewed catcher Edgar Caro because, I did talk a bunch of Colson Montgomery a couple shows before that with Future Sox's Ian Eskridge. And again, I'm trying to do a prospect review through the season. Through the off season, especially going over their top 30. So let's dive into prospects that are ranked 5, 6, 8, and 9, because if I want to get this in before the 2025 season starts, I got to combine some guys. And why am I doing 5, 6, 8, and 9? Well, it's because they're all pitchers, and that is where the hope is, folks. It's in the Sox starting pitching, or they're just pitching in general. And the White Sox have some very good young pitchers. 7 pitchers make up their top 10 prospects, according to MLB Pipeline. So it's another reason why, again, the Sox want to target young position players in the trade market for Garrett Crochet. And you got to be impressed with what the White Sox have been putting together in terms of their pitching in the farm system. And if it works, the White Sox could give the Cleveland Guardians a run for their money in terms of developing pitching. And it does need to work because, again, the Sox do not pay pitchers. One of the reasons why they're going to be trading Garrett Crochet is clearly they don't want to sign him to an extension. They just don't pay for pitching unless it's clearly favorable to them, like Jose Quintana or Chris Sale. I think the John Danks extension just broke Jerry Reinsdorf forever, and he didn't even ever pay for pitching in the first place. So the number 5 prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, is Jairo Iriate, and this is a guy that I would actually argue the bullpen should be built around. I know there's starter potential there, but again, you just have so many other more talented arms that you could put in the rotation that, I would go with actually his floor of being a very effective bullpen. And that's a very, very, very high floor. And outside of this offseason and maybe next, I would like to see the Sox not allocate precious budget dollars on the bullpen like they did in the last rebuild. Go with young guys that can throw the ball hard, like Jairo Iriarte. Obviously, I'll make the exception for the rebuild season since the bullpen trade market yielded good returns at the deadline. So I got no problem if you go with a 1-year deal guy or a 1 year and a club option guy. Hope that they have a good season out of the bullpen and then trade them at the deadline and hopefully get what the Marlins got. But build the bullpen around Iriarte. He did get a cup of coffee with the White Sox in September, 6 innings pitched out of the bullpen, walked 8, struck out 6. At AA Birmingham, he was darn good with a 3.71 ERA in 126 innings, 1.28 whip, and 122 strikeouts. He allowed just 7 home runs, had an outstanding April, shaky May and June, but came back with a 3.21 ERA in July and a 2.57 ERA in August. He had a 2.95 ERA in the second half of the AA season. 3-pitch mix of a 4-seamer, slider, and change. And that could be good enough to be a starter, but with so much starting depth and those 3 pitches, I would have him in the bullpen. And that's just me, okay? Grant Taylor checks in as the Sox 6th best prospect. Did not pitch much in the minors this year, barely at all, with a lat injury, but did recover in time to pitch in the Arizona Fall League. And the results were mixed. 9.39 ERA and 7 2/3 innings pitched. His first 3 outings gave up 12 hits, 11 runs, 7 earned, walked 6, struck out 8 in 6 2/3 innings. Final 2 outings, 4 hits, 1 run, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. So bounced back very nicely. The Athletics' Keith Law was not impressed with him. This is what he wrote. In his start here at Peoria, he was 94-99 with a plus slider at 84-88, but had very poor command and was noticeably worse across the board his second time through the order. He didn't have great feelings for his changeup and became less aggressive when the team gave him a big league to work with. His delivery gets him online to the plate, and he should be able to repeat it. So the trouble with his command was a surprise. Okay, SoxMachine.com found this found that Fangraphs, though, raved about Taylor's Arizona Fall League. He looks sensational, flashing 4 average or better pitches, including a plus flashing changeup that wasn't part of Taylor's college repertoire at all. Okay, so mixed. Still very, very young. Still very early in the game, and you hope he comes back next year, stays healthy, and pitches an entire season in the minors, maybe gets to AA too. So don't be worried too much. Mason Adams was the 8th best prospect the Sox had. One of the young arms who actually did not get a call up to the big leagues this year, but did get to AAA. Outstanding at AA with a 2.44 ERA in 18 games. 5.82 ERA in 5 games, though, at AAA Charlotte. But remember, pitching in Charlotte is like pitching at Coors Field, just in terms of how the ballpark is set up, not the lighter air. And he's a spin guy. So still projects to either be a back of a rotation guy or a reliever. Definitely has a lot of good spin pitches. So I'm not terribly worried about the higher ERA at AAA Charlotte. Kai Busch, he's the 9th Sox ranked prospect. got a cup of coffee with the White Sox and struggled with his command in 4 starts, a 5.60 ERA, 16 walks, and 11 Ks. But he's a nice big lefty, so I wouldn't give up on him yet. I would even give him a shot to win the 5th starter job if the Sox do not bring in a veteran. I hope they don't give a lot of these young guys a runway, please. But in the minors, had a 2.12 ERA at AA in 14 games, got the promotion to AAA, had a 7.01 ERA in 6 games with 4 starts. But again, Charlotte's ERAs will always be inflated with how that park favors hitters. Had a .74 whip at AA, so I think it's just Bush needs to make an adjustment to better hitters who understand what they need to sit on. That's what he just needs to make that adjustment to. Anyways, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout the offseason. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the players with the most approved next season. I'm mostly talking about the guy that has the most approved next season is Luis Robert Jr. So feel free to leave comments about today's discussion regarding factors that could impact the Garrett Crochet's trade return, the free agent shortstop market, and minor league Monday report around the team's other top 10 pitchers in their top 10. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at ToddJDub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day. I'll see you tomorrow.